Hi, Hayden here, and this video is being shot on my little camera, but I'm also recording to the AGP Tech 284. I made another video about that device earlier, and I keep experimenting with that to see how well of a job it can do for me, especially with using my larger, older camera, which has more manual controls to it. This camera here has all automatic things going on. I also have a cat in the room with me, so if you hear some noises, that'd probably be my cat. Now, I didn't do all the investigation yet, so I'm going to take a break at some point and review manuals. I'll get into that in just a few seconds. I did remove the screws from the back of the case, and this is the computer that I built in the other videos, and this thing weighs 20 pounds. Now, when I install the new SSD hard drive to this device, it's not going to be that much heavier because that thing doesn't weigh anything. It'll still be just under 20 pounds. So I removed the 3 screws from the back. I keep them on the side in my little plastic container. And then again, with the 3 screws removed from the back, I can hold onto the handle up front, place my hand flat on top and pull back, put pressure downward and just slide back. And it releases the connection, the rails from the case. And then I just have to kind of pull the bottom part of the case out a little bit. I just kind of pull this outwards a little bit, and then I can just kind of wiggle it off, and that's where we are there. Now, the one thing I want to show, and I've loosened these screws up a little bit. I'm going to go up until the point where I remove this plate right here, because this is where I can put 2 of these drives at, and these are 2 terabit. It's a 2 terabit drive that I'm going to be putting here. But I want to show you the unfortunate cable management that I did. But actually removing this and installing the new SSD drive, the 2 terabit drive, is going to allow me to actually take the time to take the effort to more properly manage my cables down there. And I'll address that a little bit later in the video. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the computer sideways, because what I don't want to have happen is I don't want to have these screws fall down into the case. So from the side, I'm just going to go ahead and be removing these screws. And I'm going to instantly drop them into my plastic bucket here. I should only be dealing with these one-side screws here. And he can sit on the table for a second, and he can too. Now, what I'm going to do is put all these in there, make sure my screws are put away. This can just fall right off. And let's take a look here at what I had done. I basically just took my cables and put them into the 5 1/4 drive bay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a few minutes. I'm going to go off the record here, or go off the air. By the way, I shoot video professionally for legal things, so I say go off the record a lot. So, and now you know. But anyways, I'm going to take a few minutes off the record here, and there we go again, and address this cabling issue, and then when I come back in, I'll show you what I did on that. So with that, I'm going to take a little break, and we'll see you in the next section here. Stand by. Okay, I'm back, and I did have to remove the video card. So again, this is the video card that I had to remove. I mentioned in another video, but this ASUS logo here, this lights up. And it probably has a piece of plastic on it, so actually let me remove that now. Oops. Anyway, so this the ASUS logo lights up, and the card is actually manufactured, I believe, by NVIDIA. It had NVIDIA drivers updated it, and it says ASUS on the back of the board here. And ironically, in a part that gets locked away, and you'll never ever see, this little locking section down here says ASUS on it as well. But anyways, we'll talk about ASUS in some other videos. I'm a very big fan of ASUS. I have been for years. But anyway, so the video card goes here. So I did have to unplug that to access one of these 2 SATA ports down here on the motherboard. So let me go ahead and find one of those. This appears to be one of them right here. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to take my drive out of the box, and I want to make sure that I have the cable correct for that. Now this cable is the same on both ends. It has that little lock pin there, and the design of it is identical on both sides. It's a little L-shaped thing. and that plugs in. It only plugs in one way, and it's a shorter one as opposed to the longer connection here, the wider connection. It's short, it only plugs in one way. So if I'm doing it, forcing it, I'm doing it wrong, and it clicks in. So that's it. So that's all there is to connecting it to the motherboard side of it. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test it to make sure that this cable is long enough, but I'm sure it is. And it will snake down, if I get this right, it will snake down right here. And let's just go ahead and click that into the motherboard now. And that has snapped into place. And as I can see here, the cable is long enough to reach where it needs to reach. It will have to make a bend, I think, though. Yeah, I'll have to make a little bend to snap in that way. And it still connects up. Okay, very good. Now that was my test fitting for it. I'm going to put this away for now. I'm going to do a little bit more. What I need to do now is actually put my video card back in, and then put in this device here. If you recall from the case video, this device actually goes in this way, and it sits right here. This has mounting for 2 additional fans in this. I don't think that I need these fans at all. I'm not overclocking this computer or anything of that nature. And I don't believe I'm going to need any additional cooling fans. And by the way, this thing, I can hear the fans on this. It's got a fan in the, of course, in the power unit, and it also has a fan built into the case on the other side here. And maybe I'll take a second and turn the case around, because while I've got the case off, you can actually see that fan. So let's go ahead and just carefully and gingerly turn this puppy around, and you can see it has quite a big fan right here. So that's built into the case. That came with the case. And then the video card, of course, has its own fan built into it. Okay, and I believe that the way this thing here works is it sucks the air into and vents it out the back of the card. I kind of like that. I've seen different reviews on it, on that sort of system or whatever, but the main reason I bought this card is because height-wise it fits into my case, and I needed it to have some clearance for the case. So that's actually why I bought that particular video card. So at this point I'm going to go off the record again, and I'm going to reconnect the video card, plug that back in. That's its power cord. It has its own power cord. It actually only uses one of these. I'm sorry. Let me make sure it's 6 or 8 pin. It is an 8 pin. It uses both of these. Some cards will only need part of it. Some cards need the extra 2. My card needs all 8. So I'll be plugging that back in and making that connection. So we'll be back in a minute after I get that done. Okay, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but this is the power cord coming out from the power unit, and this here is the data cable that goes through the motherboard. Now, what you really can't see here, and I'll bring the box that the unit came in, is I wanted to plug into the SATA 1 power source, because it seems to be out of the way of all the other cables. And if I look at this thing here for a second, almost almost all of the cables along the top are used. So this one cable way over here, which is a VGA cable, that one there is not being used, but the rest of these power sources are being used. And none of these ones along the bottom are used. So what I did is I went to this one here that seemed to be accessible and easy to plug into, and that's what I did. And it's going to be really difficult for you to be able to see that, but it is, move my glasses for a second, that cable is plugged in underneath this big motherboard cable right in here. I'm sure you can see that perfectly well. But anyways, that's why I used the picture over there. Now what I did is I just took my cables out enough so I can plug them in once I have the drive the drive holder. That would be this device right here. Once I have this reinstalled, then I'll just go ahead and make my connections and finish managing my cables. So I would be able to use the 5 1/4 bay for something now, because now I've got my cables behind it, as long as it's something that doesn't go back too far. You know, so I'll have to make some measurements and see just how deep this panel is, you know, before I go ahead and put anything in there. But thus far, I'll make another video about another device that I use. That's this thing here by a company Insignia, which I'm sure makes a million different things. And that's a card reader, but I'll discuss that in another video. I'll make a video about that specifically. So I don't necessarily need an optical drive built into the computer, and the technology changes on that is something that I'm concerned with video production. So I don't necessarily want to lock myself into anything with that, especially when I have all these different connections in the front and a whole lot in the back for different devices I might want to hook to the computer. So, but again, I'll discuss that when time comes up for it. But right now I'm going to make these two connections to my drive once I get the tray back into place. And I just wanted to show you again that I did remove this part here, which has to go back into place. I put my video card back in, and I'm just going to make sure that none of these wires are in the way of this device when I place that back in, and they're not going to be. Everything's fine. The wires are all free and clear of the case, and I will go ahead and make that connection for everything now, and I'll come back in a second. Okay, Ray Hayden here again. You'll notice that I have the manual out for the case, and the reason for that is because I wanted to make sure that I was going to use the correct screw for the 2.5-inch SSD, and I did that. So always keep your manuals and everything. They come in handy later on. Also, you'll see all these little screws on the table here, and maybe you can't see those. Let me tilt down a little bit, make sure we can see all these. These are all the screws that came with the case to help me attach different things into place. So, you know, I greatly appreciate everybody having everything that we need to have. And the picture of the screw, the proper screw to use, is very helpful in that. Now, I haven't secured anything down yet in here other than the drive itself. Now, I want to point out there's this notch right here in the actual shelf that holds the SSD. We need to make sure that we have the connections on the right place, facing towards the back, and we need to have the correct orientation for this shelf in the case. Now, I'm going to tilt the case up a little bit. And that's one of the great things I love about this case. It's very well done. They have this screw that attaches here, and there's this little piece of metal hanging over here and back here, but this is not in the factor, but this one here is. So what I need to do was make sure that I had the the device mounted properly, all the holes lined up great and everything else, but that this cutout for the shelf is in the proper location, and the connections are facing towards the back. So I'm going to make that connection, and these connections, I'll come back in just a minute and show you how that looks. Actually, I'm going to let the camera run for this one, and what I'm going to do is, before I actually make this, put this unit in place, I'm actually going to make the two connections that I need to make. The plug has to be oriented in a certain direction. We saw that earlier, where the silver clip actually goes up top, and then this little L shape, I don't know if you can see it very well, but it matches this little L shape right here, and it's the shorter one, obviously, because it's a shorter connection. So again, all this stuff only goes together one way, and he'll snap right into place there. Now, on this particular unit, the power cord, and this has been the same in computers for a long time, is that we have a number of connections. So, if I have two drives next to each other, they can be powered off of the same. They can be powered off of the same connection. It just, strings it along there and passes that along. And that's fine, that's great. But each connection for data has to be its own separate connection. However, this is going to be just a single connection. And I'm just going to take the first one in order, and I'm going to slide that in and make that connection. Okay, I'm going to unplug that and try it again. Oh, there we go. So just push it in, make sure it's fully seated in the back. You don't see any of the connector metal, the copper clips, you don't see any of that showing. And this is all in place. Now I can take the next one in place if I wanted to, and if that wasn't long enough, then I could use the third one and skip the second one and go ahead and use this connection over on this side if I want to put another drive over here. Let me tilt the camera up just a little bit here and tighten that down. There we go. But I could put two drives on this tray, and this is 2 terabits of data, so that's hopefully enough for a while. And then I just orient these cables for management into the case, so that I could still make use of that 5 1/4 inch bay. So now I'm going to make these connections, manage my cables a little bit, and I'll come back right after that. Okay, I'm pretty much done with that. I just need to do some cleanup of some materials here, let's turn this to the side a little bit. Everything is inside the case. Everything fits well inside the case. I have the video card is reconnected and everything's back in. The fan carriage here, and it also holds some additional, you can actually put another additional drive on the side here, I believe, and can actually connect it in the side if you needed to. The SSD drive is tiny for a 2 terabit drive, kind of blows my mind. The connections are firm and seated. It is connected to the tray, and the tray is connected in the proper orientation. So everything goes together one way. Sometimes you have to put a little bit back pressure on here because these cables want to push the device towards the front, so I needed to push a little bit to the back. But once I got this screw and this screw in place, you know, caddy corner like that, then the other two were just simply easy. As a matter of fact, when I got this first screw in, this side of the tray lifted up off of the surface a little bit, and you know, lifted up a little bit, and that was easy to help me get these 2 screws in. And then the last one just went into place, and I just put them in loosely, and then I kind of tightened them up, just finger tight, not overly tightened in each position, and everything is all in order and back in place. Now the only thing I need to do is reconnect, reattach the cover, and then I need to do some check out to make sure that everything's fine and dandy with that. Another thing, if I didn't mention it in this video, I want to mention it in another video too, but I'll mention it here. The total weight of this, I did mention at the beginning, the total weight is just under 20 pounds. So this device right here is just under 20 pounds, and I do put it away every day, and I hold it by its handle. You know, I just pick it up and carry it by its handle, and it's just a fantastic computer. It goes away kind of like I put my laptops away every day. I don't leave them out. I put this unit away every single day. I don't leave it out. So with that, that's the installation of the SSD drive. It was pretty easy. I took my time with it. I referenced the manuals to make sure I had the screws correct, make sure I had the connections correct, make sure I had the connection on the motherboard that I wanted to use. In case I wanted to connect another SSD on top, as well, I allowed space for me to reach another data connection on the motherboard. And I managed my cables. My cables are all out of the way now from the 5 1/4 drive bay. So if I wanted to put something in the bay, I could. It would ride underneath the drive tray up here, and I would have room for that. Let me see if I can get another shot of the wires down this way. The wires do fit in. There's a lot of space down here, and the good thing about the tiny size of the mini ITX board is the fact that it only comes back, you know, this far, you know, into the case. From here to here is all space for wire management and things of that nature. And because the board, the way the board sits in the case, it allows me to have that flexibility to place the wires wherever I need to get that job done. And also because the mini ITX only has the one expansion card, all this space next to the card here, so if you get a kind of an angle, you can see there's a lot of space right in here between the card and the case. Now I wouldn't want to block the fan space at all. So, you know, and nothing's going to be here, but, you know, if I needed to have additional room to run wires over here underneath the video card, then they'll certainly fit under there. And I can fit my hand all the way under there. And there's all kinds of space right behind this board here too, this case, part of this piece of the case. So with that, that wraps up the installation of the SSD 2 terabit card. And until we see you in the next video, take care and be well.